Everyone is talking about Estevao after his winning goal against Liverpool at the weekend. So it made sense to jump onto the Copper Club and talk about how he's performing in the Premier League, what we can expect from him for the rest of the season, and then we'll look ahead to the World Cup as well. Of course, if I'm going to talk about Estevao and Chelsea, I have to bring in Jessica Frota and the return of Peter Pankovski, both Brazilian experts in their own right and Chelsea fans, but they have promised me away from the recording that they'll try and be balanced throughout this chat. Jess, Peter, welcome to the podcast. Before I start asking and throwing you questions, because I know you're probably very excited to talk about Estevao, I'm going to feed into that a little bit and provide some more context about Estevao at the moment, who's only played 6 games, started 4, averaging 44 minutes a match. So he's being eased into the Premier League under Enzo Maresca. That goal against Liverpool, and of course an assist against West Ham as well. So it's been a promising start for Estevao. Adding a couple more stats here, which have just intrigued me really. He's had 28.5 touches per game whilst only averaging 44 minutes. Now, if we compare him to the best performing wingers or forwards in the league at the moment, Jack Grealish and Semenyo from Bournemouth, both of them have been averaging around 50 to 53 touches per game, but they've played, Jack Grealish has played double the amount of minutes at the moment, and Semenyo has played in every single game in 2.5 times minutes. So the stats around Estevao when he gets on the ball are incredibly promising, and it's probably something that we expected to see in the Premier League, where European fans were maybe a little bit sceptical because we've been shouting about him for a very long time. But Jess, over to you. Early impressions. Has Estevao performed better than expected for you, or was this what you expected from him?
Oh, this is a trick question. I'll explain why. Because no, I'll explain why. It's because as you mentioned, we all knew what he was capable of, and in terms of how good we think he is and what we expect of him as a player, then yes, I would say obviously. But at the same time, my expectation wasn't that he was going to be able to just completely feel like he feels like a Premier League player, and it's been like as you mentioned, few games, and he doesn't needed that much time to familiarize himself with the new league. And we're talking, and we've talked about this before, as an 18-year-old live in Brazil for the first time. And if you look at players like, as we've always talked about, Vinicius Jr. and the seasons that he needed to understand the club, to understand the league, and Steven, as I said, feels like he has been playing forever. So for it to happen so fast, I wasn't expecting that particularly. But in terms of what he can deliver, I still don't think we've seen the best of him. So I'm expecting now to see even more of him. If going back to how he played against Liverpool, as I mentioned before, for me, that was his best performance as of yet for Chelsea, the way that he moves. And before we started recording this, I was watching a video out of, I think it was Sunsport, that did a little bit of an analytic video about how Estevão moves in terms of the space and how he moves counter to what everybody expects, and to how the entire game is moving one side, and instead of following, he drops a little bit deep and just shows his intelligence. It's a very good analysis, and to me it just showcases how incredible that game was for him. And yeah, right now it's a mix, because I'm just buzzing, and I think all three of us are, in terms of how we loved him as a player and what we wanted to see. But I'm also just like, it seems like everybody else now sees what we were talking about, and there's a lot of hype in the media, and people are now just not only people that followed him in Brazil that hype him. It seems like a broad spectrum of people that see him and analyze him and want more of him. And I mean, that's added pressure. And so I'm just in the middle of going, yes, that's right, he is that guy. And also, okay, let's give him time. He's still very young. And so I'm in the mix of things. But right now I'm just very impressed and very, very happy and hopeful. I mean, hopefully more will come with, out of him, both for Brazil and for Chelsea.
Absolutely. It's that mentality he has, rather, and for such a young age, which is probably the most impressive part. And I think you have to very much have it up there in your mind before stepping onto the pitch, especially the Premier League. But it's also about freedom. And I'll come to you for this, Peter, because I know I'm bringing up Jack Grealish again, but he's done an interview recently where he said under the right manager, even in a rigid formation, if you're allowed that extra 10, 15% of freedom to go and express yourself, that is when you're going to get the best out of a player. And look, modern day football is moving away from that freedom, and it's very rigid, very much these are the responsibilities you have. Were you concerned that that may happen with Estevao, and how do you see him, well, in those first 4 to 6 games that he's played, that he's expressed himself a little bit? And even when he's come off the bench, you've seen the opponents who have no idea who he is at the moment, not like very, not sure which way he's going to go. Still very unpredictable, isn't he? So how have you
Yeah.
found Esteval's start at Chelsea under Maresca?
Uh, to be honest, I think I'm always, I wouldn't say controversial, but I'm always looking at it very cautiously. So, um, I think he's been done a little dirty, if I could use that term, because of all the red cards that happened recently. He was the one to maybe bear that burden, having to come off. But otherwise, what you said is very correct. I think once he was coming on to Chelsea and like the transfer was announced and everything, I think a lot of people were asking, okay, he's going to play right wing, and that's the plan for him going forward. I was mostly scared initially what we spoke about expectation, but also the fact that obviously he has to mesh with someone like Cole Palmer, and I'm just happy that when he's been introduced on the pitch, because I'll probably get to playing time obviously and why he's not still a ready-made starter in some sense. I'm just happy he is granted that freedom, and I noticed that even in the midweek game, he was playing as a number 10 against Benfica, and now he came on the right side of attack, but still, kind of the idea with him is largely the same. It is to grant him freedom. It is to give him space to open up and exploit, and regardless of whether that's against an opposing fullback or in the half spaces, it's where he's most effective, and I think that's also a kind of credit to Maresca to just utilizing him in the best way possible, because that way a young player would grow into it a lot more easily.
If you're, I'm going to throw a question back to you, Peter. You're Chelsea manager. You're responsible for Estevao. Where would you be playing him week in, week out? And I know we've just said about the flexibility, but he seems to be performing really well on that right hand side because, as I mentioned before, passing over to you, he's just unpredictable. You don't know if he's going to cut inside, he's got the confidence to shoot, or moving down towards the touchline. Like, I think even as players get to know Estevao, they're still going to struggle because of it always just seems to be one step ahead. But you're Chelsea manager. Where would you play him for the rest of the season?
I would still keep him on the right wing. I would still keep him on the right wing. To me, there's numerous games we've seen that well, not numerous games, but obviously the majority of the sample size we've seen is he's best against the fullback, and whether the best thing about him I like, to be honest, and not to go too much into detail, is the fact that whether he has to cut inside or whether he has to go towards the byline and beat his man, he's able to do it, and that helps him massively, to be honest.
Yeah, well, we saw that with the assist versus West Ham, but then he also missed quite a big opportunity in that game. I know it was a comfortable result for Chelsea in the end, but yes, we're still seeing sort of those baby steps with Estevao, like where he's still getting some things right. He's still learning. Yes, we want him to express himself, but there's still that big step up from where he was in Brazil to the Premier League, and it's going to be a huge learning curve for him. But the confidence he has, surely that's going to grow and grow, and we're going to see more of him as Maresca nurtures him. But is there any concerns for you at the moment? Because I know we've previously highlighted his physique, but is there anything in his game from these early minutes that you're like, I would like to see Estevao improve?
I'm gonna sound so obnoxious, but I'm just gonna say no.
Yeah.
No, because no, but the thing is,
I
it's not
agree.
that he is, yeah, it's not that he is like ready made. And you, as I said, I think we're still gonna see the best of him. He's still gonna develop. But for instance, when he came on, like the first minute he started playing for Chelsea, what I went like what was most impactful to me was the fact that he was still so courageous. I was scared that maybe he would just like take a step back and understand his surroundings, but no, he immediately was like, I can do this, and dribbling, and as Peter mentioned, half spaces, and it felt like himself, and I think that's what got the Chelsea fan base behind him. Like every time he touches the ball, people go whoa and expect something, and that's great. If you see like the very early games, you mentioned West Ham, it feels like he's missing that final ball, that final pass, or he needs to shoot more, which, but that's thing that's going to come with time. We saw him doing in Brazil, and the more he gets acclimatized and the more that he understands the player around him, it's going to get better. And that's why I highlighted his game against Liverpool. We saw him shooting. He right after Gittins, he had a wonderful shot that got a big defense, and he was running in the back post. And those are things that I think you're going to see gradually just with game time. It's not the particular thing that I'm going to say, oh, he needs to specifically do something like this, and it's a reason for concern. I'm not concerned at all. I think it's just giving it time, and in that sense, I think it helps massively that he has this Brazilian core now at Chelsea to help him. And if you see the interviews from João Pedro and Andre, how they are helping him, how they are taking him to the gym even when he doesn't want to go, and making sure that he gets improve his physicality and all of that, and just making him feel safe in an environment and that he is supported. I think it's been massive for him in terms of development. Right now, we're just going to have to enjoy it and be patient with him and just give him game time. And I think it will come. I think Enzo Maresca has shown that he trusts him, that he sees this talent in this kid, and that he is trying to find the right time to give him a moment to flourish. And it feels like a key has changed, I think, in Estevao as well. I think he scoring that late goal, he was on cloud nine. You could see that he was, and I think it's gonna help him even more to really believe in himself and say, okay, I can do this. I can score again. I can be in those positions. And not even his goal, as I said, just the performance right before that, the cross that he had for Enzo Fernandez had, it was just beautiful, and that was what we saw from Estevão back in Brasileirão. So I'm sure we're gonna see it again with time. And it's already so impressive. If you took out any like one of those apps and just give a rater of his stats, like it's almost like a full circle, because he's good at everything, and it's great. I mean, as a Chelsea fan, as a Brazilian fan, I'm just so happy that I can see and watch and root for Estevão, both for my national team and for my club.
It's so nice to see all these podcasts and shows we've done about Estevao over the last 2 years come to fruition. But I just wanted to touch on there where you said in the first couple of games where he was maybe trying a little bit too hard. Now, if we rewind a couple of months to the Club World Cup, where obviously we made a lot of noise about him with the deal done to Chelsea, all eyes were on Palmeiras and those first couple of games in the group stage, where you and I, Jess, as we were analysing that tournament, he wasn't at his best. He was trying a little bit too hard, but that probably played in his favour, because then all eyes were off him until that Chelsea game where he obviously produced that moment of magic. And then we saw Estevao with the players afterwards. I mean, Estevao's came out ever since and said that he had no idea what Cole Palmer was saying to him. But you could see from the body language, right, that there was the Chelsea fans recognised that there was talent coming in. And then he scored against Leverkusen at Stamford Bridge in that first friendly as well, which probably boosted him. And I completely agree with you there. Not just the Brazilian contingency, but you've got Moses Caicedo, etc., who's leading the charge in the midfield. You've got Enzo as well. So nice, familiar surroundings. And I feel like that is invaluable for anyone who's coming in, let alone a young lads. But I'll just touch upon again that mentality he has. We've seen it, right, for Palmeiras. We're now seeing it at Chelsea. And we saw it with Brazil as well, which we'll get onto very soon. But whilst I have you two here, Chelsea are obviously looking at silverware this season. Now, Estevao is surely going to be playing his part within this, Peter. But is it all on Estevao here? If he gets injured, are you concerned that Chelsea can't get top four or silverware this season? Is it because he's that unknown quantity still that teams don't know too much about him? Do you think Chelsea can deliver, or are you very much wanting to wrap Estevao in cotton wool and make sure he just gets through the season?
Well, I've been on record saying that I want to protect him, but it's more so from just general expectations rather than fitness point, really. So I'm not I'm not 100% sure, but to me, I feel Estevao has already been a very like a quite impactful player, a ceiling raiser, one might say, because definitely when you see just the impact that, not just on this game, just the general impact that he has had on Chelsea's wing play in general, and just creativity and ability to contribute from the start, and couple that with what Jess said about unpredictability, I suspect Chelsea can still make top four with him. Sorry, without him, just because of the strength of the squad. I would say also opponents are slightly weaker to me, but if he's there, I feel much, much more confident. Much more confident. Like I can, if anything, I'd make us favorites if that's the case, to be honest.
Yes, I was on a different podcast yesterday and I made a really bold claim to say that the 50 to 16 million pound price tag for Estevao, I don't think I'll see a better deal to the day I die, which sounds incredibly bold. But before we talk about Brazil, I'm going to put that to you as well. The package that Chelsea put in front of Estevao and his family is turning out to be such an incredible bit of business. Do you agree with my statement that this is potentially the transfer of our lifetime, or am I going a little bit too far there? I personally don't think I am, but I'm intrigued to hear what you've got to say.
I would say again, it's going to feel like a cop out answer, but it's not. I think it's too soon to say, but it's just credit to you because if it does turn out like we want it to turn out and like we hope and how we feel about him as a player, then I think in a couple of years we're going to look back and say, okay, this was the deal, as you said, of a lifetime. But it's just there's a lot of unknowns in terms of we never know about how injuries and all of that, and if it's the manager going to change and all. So there are a lot of unknown quantities. But if we're just looking at him as a player, I think we can already see that he is worth that price tag. So I can say that much. But as such a bold claim as you've made, I think we need to analyze like a lot of other circumstances. But one thing I will point out though is that it's a very close fee to what Real Madrid paid for Endrick. And so, I mean, it's already like, and Endrick is not a bad player at all. I mean, he had a lot of hype. I still think he's a fantastic player. I still think it's going to work out for him. I don't know if Real Madrid or anywhere, but it's just a lot of talent there for it to not work out, in my opinion. But it just shows how, in a weird way, because there were a lot of people that didn't think it's going to work out with Estevao and Chelsea. There are a lot of young players not going to get a chance, but in a weird way, it seemed that it ended up being a great fit for him. And the fact that it was a young squad and that Maresca has to trust young players. So he has to trust Estevao and has to give him time. And if you're looking at those fees, they're very similar fees for both of those deals. It seems right now that Chelsea got the much better deal out of the equation, as did Estevao. So I think that's a positive point in your claim. I'll leave it at that.
Very well put. Let's move across to just have a little bit of Brazil chat, because obviously you've got the World Cup coming next year. Brazil haven't been in a good place for a while. Anyone who's listened to our podcast or shows with Jess and I, we've been very open and honest about how poor Brazil have been. But look, in the last international break, Estevao scored his first goal for Brazil, becoming the youngest goal scorer since a certain Pele back in 1958. And you think about the talent Brazil have produced since then, it's quite an incredible stat. But Brazil are in a bad moment. They're going to be relying potentially on Estevao for those moments of magic to bail them out, which is still quite bizarre to say, even though I've been very close to Brazil for a while and watching them fumble in games where they should be performing better. But Jess, just for you and the people of Brazil, has this given you hope? I know Carlo Ancelotti is coming in, and that's given Brazilian fans quite a bit of hope, or divided opinion anyway, depending on his lineups, however positive or negative you want to be. But from an Estevao point of view, has this lifted expectations now that Brazil can potentially go and deliver on US soil?
It's weird to answer that from Brazilian perspective, because Brazilians, we're divided. Like there's part of Brazil, and when I mean part, I just don't mean like part of Brazilians. I mean in each of us, like in every Brazilian, part of you, it's gonna be like, it's Brazil, we can do it. We're gonna bring X home, so we're gonna go and win it. There's just this optimism because it's Brazil and because it's football and because we always hope for the best in football. But then there's this more logical part that looked at how we did during the qualifiers, and it wasn't great at all. It was like the worst that we could have made up for ourselves. And I mean, I think Ancelotti kind of steadied the ship. We were like in a downward spiral, and he was able to just steady it. And now it's about finding rhythm and finding the best 11, and just understanding. But we are in a much better space, in my opinion, in a way, than we were a couple of months ago. I wouldn't say logically that there's this expectation we're going to perform in a great manner, but there is a lot of expectation with certain players. And I remember back in the Club World Cup, for instance, how João Pedro performed for Brazil. That in itself was like, got every Brazilian like, oh my God, maybe we found our nine, maybe we found our nine, maybe we found what we were missing and all that. So there are certain players that we have expectations on, and Estevao is definitely one of them. And I think more of it is due to Vini Jr., as incredible as he is. He has never been able to perform at Brazil and for Brazil like he performed for Real Madrid. So because of that, because we still haven't seen Vini Jr. playing for Brazil the way that he does and just did, and for Real Madrid's last game, a lot of expectation shifted, I think. And we were looking at, okay, it's not going to be Vini Jr. We need another guy, right? So we're searching for this other guy. And again, with Estevao scoring for Liverpool, the entirety of Brazil was talking about Estevao. The entirety of Brazil, okay, he's going to be the next big thing. He's really going to be the next big thing. And so there's a lot of chatter in hopes of him. Maybe he's going to be the one to bring us joy. But I would say right now it's more like finding an 11 that works. And if we find an 11 that works, maybe he can be the differential, let's say. Maybe he can be the one that brings us that individuality that we crave as Brazilians.
We got to the end of this podcast, and I didn't expect you, Jess, and Peter to be so balanced about Estevao. We've got struck the right balance there. I thought you were both going to say some outlandish claims, and then it ended up me saying them. So I really appreciate.
I'm scared to jinx it.
You're scared to jinx.
I'm just scared to jinx it.
I can, as a neutral.
I know me.
As a neutral, I can say it.
Yeah, you can say it, but I don't want to say it because I'm a Chelsea fan, and fate has a way with us. No,
I've said too many. I've said too many positive comments about Estevao for about 2 years now, so I have to I have to die with them. I have to stick with them. But look, Peter, Jess, really appreciate your time talking about Estevao. Let's definitely regroup in 3-6 months, see how he's doing, and hopefully my bold claims are accurate. If you've enjoyed this show, please do subscribe across YouTube. This isn't exclusive for YouTube, but we do have regular podcasts across Apple and Spotify as well. So hope you've enjoyed the show, and we'll catch you very soon.